Miracles happen to each and every one of us every day, but are they actually recognized for what they are? With every miracle, a universal lesson is manifested in its full expression, regardless of what the miracle is or regardless of the learning lesson. It does happen to you, just as it happened to this blessed woman as she received her miracle through the lesson of divine love.
Sally is a beautiful woman who's been looking for love for most of her 40-plus years. She was an only child raised by a single mom due to a bitter marriage, didn't think much about men. So Sally grew up without a father or father figure in her life. Her primary problem was that she didn't have the love or nurturing of a man in her life who simply cared about her for the person she was and still is. When Sally was in her late 30s, she met a man whom she thought was the one. He talked sweet to her and told her how gorgeous she was. He opened car and building doors for her. He even pulled out her chair when she sat down. She thought he was the most charming and loving man she had ever been with. But after a couple of short months, once she was hooked on David, he seemed to change. He went from being courteous and charming to being demanding about having all of his needs met. It's true, Sally is a very giving, warm, and extremely loving woman who is always excited about pleasing the man she loves. But David, her current love interest, really became a tyrant who made her feel like she was never good enough, that she could never be the kind of woman a man would want for a long time. He would often say, "No man would ever want you, so consider yourself lucky I'm still with you." Well, after a couple of years of David's abusive attitude, Sally invited him out to the place where they first met, a lovely little tea garden. He thought she was going to give him something special because, after all, it was their anniversary. But David got a big surprise. Sally, with a smile on her face, told him she had had enough of his horrible treatment towards her, and she was dumping him. Sally said, "I have come to realize that I am a phenomenal woman, and you've been lucky I've stayed around this long. I'm over you, and this relationship is done." David, looking stunned and confused, left her abruptly, saying, "Who needs you?" Sally continued to sit at the table, sipping on her tea and feeling oh so wonderful at having just dumped a huge load that was weighing her down. She had finally come to love herself more than trying to get the love of a man. Sally enjoyed sitting there smiling from ear to ear, thinking about how she had let David go. "It's time to move on with the rest of my life," she continued thinking, getting up from the table to leave. Just then, a gentleman came into the tea garden. He sees Sally and recognizes her immediately. "Hey, Sally," he says, "what a lovely smile. Do you remember me?" "I remember you a little bit," she said. "Are you Fred's friend who I met at the art show 8 months ago?" Bob verified that he was the one and the same. Although their conversation was brief, Bob gave Sally his card and said, "Promise you'll call me." Sally smiled as she walked out of the garden. Needless to say, it was the beginning of a great and loving friendship.
Sally's miracle was about learning to love herself. It's the greatest universal lesson of them all, to have divine, unconditional love for yourself as well as for others. There are no coincidences in the universe. The universe completely supports us in every single miracle we have as we follow some of these universal lessons, just as Sally followed the lesson of divine love. There are no order of difficulties in miracles. There's no such thing as a miracle being too big or too small. A miracle is simply a miracle. Have you acknowledged your miracle? Are you waiting on your miracle? Indeed, follow your lessons, expect your miracles, and acknowledge each and every one of them as they happen every day. Until we see each other again, always be at peace Stay in joy and always love.